Hey, everybody, welcome back to another Motivation Monday podcast for Monday, September 23rd, 2019. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you are having a good start to your week on this Monday morning. So, we're going to continue our series on steps to an effective practice routine this week. And this week, we're going to talk about something that I think is one of the most important parts of the practice routine, if I'm being honest, and that is record keeping. And I think this is something that a lot of us fail at, including myself. But the past few years, I've been a lot better at it. And it has, really benefited when I come back to the instrument day after day. It's really helped me to pick up right where I left off. And I think that's a really important thing, continuity in a practice routine. Because our routine can get all jumbled up and we start working on things that maybe we already worked on, or we go to a completely unrelated place, and that kind of prevents us from getting the most out of the time that we're spending on the instrument. So let's talk about a couple ways to keep records. So I think you can kind of do it in two different ways. And they're both very valid ways of keeping records, and some of you might even prefer a combination of both, which is actually what I prefer. So the first one would be to keep a very, very simple list form of record keeping. Just meaning like you're listing everything that you're working on. Maybe you're listing tempo markings, metronome markings, and just keeping a very organized list that doesn't go into much detail. Could be, I'm working on rhythm changes and I'm working on them at this tempo, and I'm trying to do lick number 4 and lick number 5 over the 3-6-2-5. So if you are doing very regimented things in the practice room, a very regimented list could be really helpful for you, where it's just cut and dry, straight to the point, really useful for technical things that you're working on, and just basically record keeping. You could almost think about it like you're an accountant listing numbers, right? And that's a really good way to just, like I said, pick up day after day at the exact tempo that you left off on, working on the exact same things, and not letting yourself sort of repeat some things that you've already done, or not increase your tempos, or increase your tempos too much. The other side of it is also true, where you might jump tempos if you're not keeping those detailed notes, and not being really disciplined, which can, definitely be a barrier to getting better. So that would be the first way. Now, the second way would be more like journaling, more like a long form kind of response to what you're working on. And the cool thing about this is that it allows you to expand upon just making lists and kind of write down what you were thinking about, and describe it in more like a paragraph form. And this is really useful for if you're exploring the creative side of playing jazz, right? Where maybe you're working on these new ideas and you don't quite have them together yet, but you can kind of write down what you're thinking, even if it's less than 100% clear. Like I find myself in the practice room stumbling upon something, like a new sound or a new way of thinking about an idea or a structure. And if I don't write it down right away, kind of what I'm thinking about at the moment, it will leave my brain and I won't remember that thing that could turn, that little germ of an idea that could turn into something amazing. It'll just leave my brain. And that's a real shame. Same thing when I'm composing. It's like if I don't record this really, really cool idea that I came up with, I'll never remember it again and it will be gone. And that's really disheartening sometimes. So this is a more long form thing. You'll see in my practice record that it's just like paragraphs from day to day of ideas that I was thinking of. And it's also a great way where maybe you have this sort of flash of inspiration, but in one practice session, you don't get it fully fleshed out, meaning that you don't arrive at a conclusion from this little idea that you had. Maybe now over the course of days and weeks, you can go from this small idea into like a fully formed concept that you can actually apply to a tune. And I find that the long form, record keeping really lends itself to that. So lately I've been doing both, and this is what I really suggest to you. So at the top of my, practice page, I'll have some numbers and lists written down and some metronome markings and stuff like that. And then I leave myself at the bottom of the page a little bit of room to just kind of long form write what I'm thinking about, what I'm frustrated with, what I'm happy with, and maybe where I want to go next, right? And this has been really good for me. I feel like since I've been very disciplined about keeping records, my progress has been more linear, meaning that like my ability goes up gradually but steadily instead of taking those kind of peaks and valleys that I find when I'm not being disciplined with myself about keeping records. It just really helps. It just really helps to not lose your place and not come back to the practice room and think, wait, what was it that I worked on yesterday? Because we all know that as soon as we leave the practice room, sometimes, life has a way of taking over, and then we just kind of forget about all that stuff that we did in that important practice time. So keeping the records allows me to go back, and this is really cool. I can come back actually years later and look at what I was working on. And maybe it's a concept that I completely forgot that I can come back to, 2 years later. I kind of left off in an awkward place on that one thing that I was working on. And, I'd really like to get back to that. It can also really come in handy for that kind of stuff. So that's another reason that I really appreciate keeping records. I've talked about that before on the episodes about practice journaling and stuff like that. So there's my next step. Make sure that as you are in the practice room, getting down to business, you are keeping detailed records on what you're working on. So let me know what you think about this. As usual, you can leave some notes in the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group, and we can always have discussions on this stuff in there. So if you want to get in touch, leave me a note in there, and I will definitely get back to you. Hope you guys have a great week. Keep some detailed records, and most important thing, make sure you find some time to practice. All right, we'll talk to you on Friday. See you then. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.